All right, Austin, take it away.
Okay, hey everybody, and welcome back to the Bleeding Grave podcast here on lovely episode 28. Hannah, it's been a week, 2 weeks. It's been a 2 week
We're
mess ordeal.
Recording at the last minute because we've both been sick after Thanksgiving, and I didn't get over mine until like a few days ago, and I'm still kind of getting over it, mostly over it, but I know Austin's been struggling.
I mean, I'm about 85-90% now. Like, it's better, but it was like, I don't know about you, mine was like in 3 stages. Like last Wednesday, it was bad. It was good for like Thursday. And Friday comes around, psych, you get the chills with a 101 fever.
Yeah, that actually kind of happened to me too. So I had gotten sick. I started getting sick the evening of Saturday after Thanksgiving, and I stayed home for 2 days at the beginning of the week. By the end of the week, I was like, okay, I think I'm good. I don't think I need medicine. I think we're almost over it. And then I woke up Saturday morning again, a week later, and it was just, like, terrible all over again.
Yeah, I don't know what it was.
It was something, but
it was something.
Everybody who I know who's gotten sick recently with, like, the head cold or whatever it was, it wasn't COVID. I tested 3 times, and it was not COVID. But everybody I know who got, like, the head cold or whatever, is just, like, the coughy, phlegmy, snotty shit, it just knocked us all out.
Yeah.
One of my coworkers lost her voice for, like, a week.
Oof.
Yeah.
Man, my only thing was, like, the last time I got sick like this, I got pneumonia, and really bad. There was fluid building up in my left lung.
Oh, God.
So that was fun, taking antibiotics for, like, 3 weeks. So I was like, oh, please don't let this be that.
Yeah.
Then, what was it? Wednesday, I didn't go to work because I had that terrible migraine. And then after the migraine went away, it's like all of a sudden I just start getting way better. Like, it all of a sudden was like, I was 10% on Wednesday.
Yeah.
And, like, Thursday and Friday, I was, like, feeling, like, 70, 80. I was like, this is great.
Yeah.
But it still had, like, all that mucus in the sinuses.
Yeah,
and,
like,
it's like a faucet.
And I'm sure everybody wants to hear it, but, like, I'm still draining out my sinuses and everything. Thankfully, my ears aren't plugged up anymore. That was the worst part.
Yes!
My ears were so... Even once I was feeling, like, a million times better, I couldn't hear anything because my ears were so plugged up.
Yeah, okay. So, yeah, okay. We had, like, the exact same thing then.
Yeah, so... We probably got it at Thanksgiving. My dad ended up not feeling good either. Christian got sick, even though he wasn't at our family Thanksgiving, but obviously I live with him, so...
I mean, congregations of family like this, that's, I guess, bound to happen.
Yeah, and especially after the last few years, I'm sure everybody's immune systems, like, they were treated very well with wearing masks and everything. Like, I didn't get sick for, like, 2 years through COVID, and then the first time I got sick after COVID, it wasn't COVID, but it was a cold, and that one had me laid out for, like, 10 days, and 9 of those days I could not read because of how sick I was.
Jesus.
Like, I could not comprehend anything I was reading. It was rough.
Girl, that sounds rough.
It was bad, but... Alright. Do you have anything fun to start us off with?
No, not this week.
I actually don't either, because I was so focused on my notes and then what we were doing for the auditorium. How about this? If anybody's read, because I'm on a reading kick right now, if anybody's read a really good book recently, comment anywhere or like on Spotify, whatever. Just let us know what you've read, what it was about, maybe what you liked about it. Let's just start a little conversation just for funsies. So I just finished Winterwood earlier this week, and it's a really good, like, cozy, witchy story. It's by Shea Earnshaw. And I just really like her writing because she usually gets at least one twist in there that I don't see coming.
Ooh, that's a good writer.
Yeah, because I can normally, like, pick out what's going to happen in a plot pretty quick. But the first book I read by her was The Wicked Deep, and I was, like, maybe a third of the way through it, and I was like, maybe that's what she's going to do with it. But then I went, no. I don't see anybody really writing like that, so I was like, I don't think that she's going to do that kind of twist. And you know what she did?
She did the twist?
She did the twist, and I was surprised because I had decided it wasn't going to happen. So, same deal with this book. I had kind of a thought, and then I was like, no, but, like, my thought wasn't quite on it. It was on the right track, but it wasn't quite on it. So it was just good stuff. And now I'm reading the second book of the Hazelwood series, so...
Okay.
And I won't get too much into that one just because we've already been talking for a second now, but...
Hey, sometimes people need good book recommendations.
Yeah, I'm just saying, I'm trying
She's
to
jazzed about it.
really commit to reading a lot over the winter, you know, and just really taking advantage of the fact that, like, we're going to be inside and everything. And I know Austin and I were planning on working a little extra hard in the background to hopefully get ahead and everything, since we don't really have anything going on over winter, but books are my other big thing this winter. I just got like 5 more this week, so I'm set for a bit.
Wow, it's been a while since I've heard Hannah go, I got 5 books.
Yeah.
It's usually, I got this one book, or it has nothing.
Mm-hmm.
But now, she's like back to like 4 or 5 years ago now.
Yeah.
Like,
living up to my book tattoo.
that's for damn sure. I mean, this girl would come home like every month with like 5 to 10 books.
Oh yeah,
I shit
absolutely.
you not.
And I would read at least 3 of them within like 2 to 3 weeks.
She would. She gets through it. She got through them in a year.
I always need to find like good books that like really draw me in.
Well, yeah, what's the point of reading it if it doesn't draw you in?
Exactly. And like obviously there's classics I want to read, and some of them I know I'm just not going to read because I know I won't get drawn in the way I need to enjoy it, and then I'm going to put off reading for a super long time. But I'm
it's
just
like your hyperfixation that comes around every now and then.
Yeah, pretty much. So I'm just committed to reading books that like the synopsis like pulls me in and like gets me really interested in everything. I'm really into the cozy witchy kind of vibe right now, so we're sticking to that for a while.
Well, aren't you just, when you're in your house with your dog, aren't you just a cozy witch anyways?
Pretty much, yeah. I've been wearing my sweaters and drinking my tea.
I mean, if you look at, she looks really comfy right now.
So comfortable.
She's got this cardigan on. She's got these like really cozy looking leggings.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm working on stretching this cardigan out, so over the weekend it's going to be my cardigan for sure before I wash it again, and then stretch it while it's wet. But I'm very, very comfortable. I've been wearing a sweater all week, so.
Yeah, I don't doubt that in the slightest.
I have so many sweaters now.
If you like it, buy it in multiple colors.
And that's what I did. I literally got this sweater in every color except for one. So.
Oh yeah, it was one that you didn't like, was it?
Yeah, it was like a beigey tan kind of one.
Well, if you want to look like the school librarian, that's why you get that one.
Right, yeah. So I've got it in black, gray, white, orange, and green. So.
Oh boy.
Yeah. It's good. I wear them all the time. I mostly wear sweaters to work, which is great. So.
Hey, receptionist job.
Calls for a sweater.
Exactly. you get cold sitting there.
Right, exactly.
Doing her clerical work.
And plus, it's like one of the easiest ways to dress business casual, especially when I'm allowed to wear leggings, a sweater and leggings. I'm comfortable at work all the time.
Man, best switch.
Right, yeah, it's good stuff. It's real good stuff. All right, well, with that, we should probably flip the coin and get into this. I think it's my turn.
Yeah, it is your turn.
It's been a minute since I flipped, so I'm pretty confident in saying it's my turn.
Jesus. What are we doing?
Wow.
Just yeet the coin.
I don't even know where it went. Oh, there it is. It's,
I would like you to flip again.
That's fair.
Be nice to the coin. It's been with us for 28 episodes.
The problem is that my nails are short right now,
Oh.
so I didn't account for that. My nails have been super long until recently. It's heads now. So that means Austin gets to go first.
Okay, yeah, it does. My brain is processing.
It was tails where it landed before.
Okay.
So that's why when you were like, I would like you to flip it again, I was like, that's probably a good idea. Otherwise he's going to be mad.
Well, I wouldn't be mad. I'm just like...
A little upsetty.
Upsetty spaghetti, but at the same time, like, flip it and catch it. That's how we've been doing it.
Yeah, I know. I just...
Not flip it and eat it.
I know. It went, like, up and over my head. That was rough. That was a rough one.
That was a whole dramatic struggle bus.
It was an ordeal. Well, I'm just going to sit here and sip my coffee and listen to your story after that nonsense.
All right. Well, we're about to get into some more nonsense.
Woohoo.
So, who I will be talking about today is a man who inspired iconic horror movies such as Leatherface from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs, and Norman Bates of Psycho. If anybody knows who I'm talking about Ed Gein.
Yes! I'm so excited.
This one's been a highly suggested one, and Hannah finally suggested it as well, which just pushed me over the edge.
I never suggested it because we don't live, I mean, it's not like just a hop, skip, and a jump, but like we live within driving distance
within
of
2
where
hours.
he lived. Yeah.
Well, Where he grew up, where he lived, were about 6 hours away.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, from what I knew. Okay, whatever. You're gonna tell me.
I'm gonna tell you regardless.
But I just didn't suggest it because it's close enough to home that I didn't think I had to suggest it. But I was just thinking the other day, I was like, I should probably remind him of Ed Gein because I really want to hear Ed Gein soon.
I've had plenty of people, plenty of friends, plenty of people of work that are like, when are you going to do Gein? Like, what serial killer are you going to do next after John Wayne Gacy?
Right.
And I didn't know because there's so many good ones.
Well, that's the thing. Ed Gein wasn't a serial killer.
Like, he was and he wasn't. That's the thing.
My understanding is that he only killed one person. I know you're going to tell us the story and everything, but it was mostly grave robbing as far as I know. Like I said, Austin's going to tell us the story. But I just want to say real quick before you get into it, when I went to the Museum of Death a few years ago out in LA, there was a wall in one of the rooms that was just Ed Gein.
Yeah.
Man.
Some
those pictures are whoa, like,
wild. Mm-hmm. So there is some very graphic information in this, so just buyer beware. And let's get into it.
Woohoo!
So Ed Gein was born Edward Theodore Gein on August 27th, 1906 in La Crosse, Wisconsin, to parents Augusta and Philip Gein. Gein was the second of two boys. His older brother's name was Henry. The boys were raised very Catholic by their strict mother. She frequently preached to them about the innate immortality of the world, the evil of drinking, and her belief that all women, except for her, were naturally promiscuous.
Oh my god, I forgot about that. Oh my god. You want to talk about problematic mama's boys? Mm-hmm. Ed Gein is the poster child.
Oh, yes. The more we get into this. Yeah. So every afternoon, Augusta would set aside time to read the Bible to her boys. And during this time, she had a hatred of her husband, Philip, as he was an alcoholic. He could not hold down a job. And some of the various jobs that he would work would be a carpenter, a hide tanner, and an insurance salesman. Kind of very broad spectrum of what he was doing there.
A lot for Ed Gein to learn about.
Mm-hmm. No foreshadowing there. But while living in La Crosse, Philip owned a small grocery shop and would eventually sell the business and move his family to isolation on a 155-acre farm in the town of Plainfield, Wisconsin. So literally, La Crosse, Wisconsin is all the way east. Plainfield is like all the way west.
Yeah.
Oh, wait. La Crosse is west.
It's on the opposite side of the state from each other.
Yes.
Let's make it easy.
Somebody's gonna be like, it's east, not west.
East? I thought you said west.
Patrick! So while living on the farm, Augusta would turn visitors away very frequently as she saw them as potentially bad influences on her son.
I'm going to use that as an excuse when people come over. Be like, you are a potentially bad influence on my dog. Go away.
But even with turning visitors away, Ed still attended school, but this would be the only time he could leave from the farm was to attend school. And if he didn't get home right away, there was hell to pay by beating.
God damn it. Stop beating your kids. They turn into fucked up people. That's the one thing I've learned.
We have too many of these cautionary tales. So while in school, Ed was a very shy kid, as most recall, even calling him strange. Teachers and students remember Ed as having strange mannerisms. The most common one was he would burst into random laughter, like someone just told the funniest joke he has ever heard, but no one said anything before the laugh attack. So while at school, Ed started to make friends. And when he would tell his mother how he was making friends, she punished him for it.
Jesus. I thought you were going to say punched.
Nope, punished.
Okay.
Punished by locking him in his room, punished him by whipping him, beating him, all that good stuff. Well,
so
not good stuff.
Everything shy of punching him.
Basically, everything that you were legally allowed to do to your kid.
Unfortunately.
Even with this, Ed did very well in school. Despite his poor social developments, he excelled in reading. Just like Hannah.
I also had poor social development.
See? I'm just saying.
But I didn't murder anyone.
That we know of.
Yet.
She's watched enough crime documentaries. I think she knows how to get away with a thing or two.
I'm one of those people that when, like, I'm listening to crime documentaries and, like, just reading about it, I'm like, man, like, why'd you do that?
Right?
Like, if you just did this, you probably would have gotten away. The other day, I found myself on a spiral about exactly how, like, people in the mob got, like, away with, like, murder without a trace, and I was thinking about it, like, way too hard, and I was like, oh, yeah, I totally get how they did it. And then I was like, what the fuck am I doing?
But here's the thing. Here's the difference between you and them, is that you realize what you're thinking.
Right.
They don't.
I might get really far into it before I realize it, but I eventually realize it.
Exactly. So we're going to fast forward to 1940, where Ed's father, Philip, died at the age of 66 from heart complication, brought on by his alcoholism.
Oh, who would have thought?
Who would have thunk it? Ed and his brother Henry would pick up odd jobs to help cover living costs. The brothers worked as handymen. Ed would even babysit for the neighbors. Ed always had an easier time connecting with kids than adults due to his social disabilities. Kids were drawn to him for his childlike innocence. He could always make a kid laugh, and Ed always loved making kids smile. During this time, Ed's brother Henry started dating a mother of two, and they were planning on moving in together. Henry was concerned about Ed's relationship with his mother, and often spoke ill about her around Ed. This infuriated and hurt Ed to hear his own brother saying these nasty things about their mother.
It's just like the perfect storm.
Right?
That's
Right.
the worst part, is I can see where exactly every problem is.
Well, like, you have your mother who, unfortunately, is like Stockholm Syndrome with this.
Who is, it's severe enmeshment, is what it is. And then just all of those other little sprinkles and cherries on top.
Right.
It's just a recipe for disaster.
I even have a little thing in here in quotation, even though a lot of what Henry said was the truth.
Right. Even if it was the truth, that doesn't mean that it
Right.
helped at all.
Nope.
It didn't. It did the opposite.
4 years later, on May 16th, 1944, Ed was performing a controlled burn of the marsh vegetation on the property when it got way out of control. This got so out of control, it caught the attention of the fire department when they saw black plumes of smoke.
Oh, yeah, I bet.
So they rushed to the area of the fire. It almost took an entire day, but the fire department was able to get the fire under control and extinguished.
Hold on. So I have one question.
Yeah.
How do you do a controlled fire without the fire department there?
Well, you got to remember it's 1944.
Even in the 40s, that one screams common sense to me.
I mean, does Ed seem like a man who has common sense?
You got a point.
I'm sorry to point it out, but at the same time,
No, you got a point. You got a point.
He probably was like, hey, they got to get this vegetation under control if we're going to make any money off the property. Like, that was his only focus.
Yeah, okay. Yep. Talk about a hyperfixation.
Right? That night, after all the fire department left, Ed reported his brother missing, stating he hadn't seen or heard from him all day. So, that very same night, a team of volunteers with lanterns and flashlights went out to search for Henry. Some of the members of the search team came across a lifeless body. It was, in fact, Henry's body. Police were called, and an examination of the body was performed, and it was found that Henry had been dead for quite some time, like a day or two. He had no physical injuries that they could see, and he was not burned either. They ruled Henry's cause of death as heart failure. But once Henry's body was at the coroner's, they found that he had bruises on his head, and even with this information, police didn't suspect foul play. How do you not suspect foul play when there's bruises on this man's head?
There's a lot of red flags with that whole bit right there.
Right? Another report came from the coroner's office stating Henry's death was actually asphyxiation, as they found bruises on his neck.
Interesting.
You're going to find this even more interesting. Police ruled this as an accident and did not perform any further investigation, and a full autopsy was never performed. Accident.
Yeah, he accidentally asphyxiated himself with nothing around his neck. Accident. Man, shit just happens, let me tell you.
Sometimes those invisible ropes just get you. I don't know what to tell you.
They come out of nowhere and they bite you.
With Henry now gone, Ed and his mother were only ones left in the house. Shortly after Henry's death, Augusta had a bad paralyzing stroke. Ed would devote himself to taking care of his mother, but Augusta's health would rapidly deteriorate. And about a year and a half later, on December 29th, 1945, Augusta would have a second stroke, ultimately killing her. Ed was now absolutely alone in the world.
I mean, it's unfortunate because, like, it broke his heart.
Yeah, right?
Even with the awful stuff that she did.
Mm-hmm. He was...
and I know, he was... Obviously, he's a problematic person. That's why we're talking about him. But
very much so.
I still just have sympathy for heartbreak.
Oh yeah, you can't help but feel bad for the guy.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's the empathy is there.
And kind of what we were talking about, a recipe for like he was kind of set up for failure.
Exactly.
Maybe not intentionally, but he was, and that's just unfortunate. That's the unfortunate truth.
Right. So with Augusta's death, Ed was able to hold on to the farm by taking on odd jobs and still being a handyman. He would board up any room that was used by his mother in the house. This included the whole upstairs, the downstairs parlor, and the living room. He wanted to leave them untouched. As the rest of the house would become very disgusting, these rooms would stay pristine.
Well,
and that's the way he wanted to
leave it.
leave it.
Clean.
Nope. So with everything basically boarded up, Ed lived in this very tiny, small, almost like closet area that was next to the kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
So then basically that was in and out into the kitchen. And during his time alone, Ed became interested in pulp magazines and adventure stories. I didn't know there was an actual term, pulp magazine. I found this interesting. Was that because it was the material the magazine was made from.
Oh.
So from the wood pulp, and it was like a thicker, not super like straight like magazine. It was like a wet magazine almost looking thing. What they called like the magazines we have today, they called those glossies. And I've heard that term before, but I didn't know what it ever meant.
So I wonder, is that where, because there's the term pulp fiction. Mm-hmm. Is that where that came from then?
Well, the Pulp Fiction movie, I'm pretty sure.
I thought Pulp Fiction was also like a phrase.
No, it's the movie.
Oh.
It might be a phrase too. I'm not 100% sure.
We can look it up really quick.
Okay, so Pulp Fiction meaning books about imaginary characters and events.
Pulp fiction in American English, fiction dealing with lurid or sensational subjects, often printed on rough, low-quality paper manufactured from wood pulp. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that is, it is a phrase, and that is where it comes from. Perfect. That's really interesting.
Great. We learn something new every day.
Yeah, I learned a lot of new things, too. I'm going to learn a thing or two in my story, too.
Ooh, love it.
Or maybe, I don't know. Apparently, Christian knew the stuff that I learned today. But
okay.
I didn't.
Well, I'll let you know. And if I do know, I'll play dumb, okay?
Okay.
So the stories that Ed would get really super into are stories about cannibals or the Nazi atrocities.
Would get into...
The stories about cannibals and the stories about Nazi atrocities.
But, like, he got into in what way?
Like, he was super fixated on it. Like, he loved reading about it.
Okay.
He loved reading, more specifically, Lise Koch, a Nazi war criminal who would select tattoo prisoners for death so she could remove their skin and make lampshades and other items out of it. See where we're going now?
Oh my god. Oh my god.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow. Honestly, you're going to probably get more uncomfortable as the story keeps going on. So, back to the farm. During this time that Ed now owned the farm, he would start getting money, so subsidies from the government to support the farm. Ed even sold off 80 acres to make some extra cash, as this portion belonged to his dead brother Henry and no longer had a need for it.
Okay.
But mostly the extra cash.
Mostly the extra cash.
So we come to the morning of November 16th, 1957. 58-year-old Bernice Warden would disappear. Bernice owned the local hardware store, and at around 9:30 a.m., the hardware store truck was seen leaving, presumably to deliver parts to a farmer or to a local shop. The store saw very little people that day, most likely due to it was prime hunting season during that time, because we Midwesterners love our hunting season. Mm-hmm. So around 5 p.m. that same day, Bernice's son went to come visit her at the store. Her son was Deputy Sheriff Frank Warden. Frank noticed the cash register was open and there were blood stains all around where the register was. Upon investigation, a sales receipt was found that Ed Gein was at the store the night before ordering some antifreeze that he would be able to pick up in the morning. That same night, Ed was at the local grocery store when he was found and arrested. Police took Ed back to his farm so they could search the property for Bernice. And this is what they found on the property.
Oh boy, here we go. Here we go. This is the good stuff.
This is the good stuff. Another sheriff's deputy went to search one of the many sheds on the property, and he was not prepared for what he found inside. It was Bernice's decapitated body hung upside down by her legs as if she were a deer. Her torso was dressed out like what you would see while processing a deer. She was found shot in the head with a .22 caliber rifle, and all the mutilations after investigation found happened after her death. With this interesting find, police turned their attention to Ed's house.
Oh, no shit?
Right? And I'm going to list off everything that they found in this house.
Let's go.
Buckle up, Buttercup. This is a ride. Inside the house, they found whole human bones and fragments, a wastebasket made of human skin, a human skin covers several different chairs, skulls on his bedposts, female skulls with some of them had the tops sawn off of them to make bowls, a corset made from a female torso, skinned from shoulders to waist, leggings made from human leg skin. I'm sorry, I gotta stop. It's just rocking back and forth, just like, yep, okay.
Because I know what I'm waiting for.
Masks made from the skin of female heads. They found Bernice's head, her entire head in a burlap sack. They also found her heart in a plastic bag in front of Ed Gein's potbelly stove.
Great.
Upon further investigation, they found a young woman's dress. And I don't like saying this one all the time because they found 9 vulva in a shoebox.
I forgot about that one.
Yep.
That was not the one I was waiting for.
And with the investigation, they found 2 of the vulvas belonged to 2 15-year-olds.
Oh, good turn.
They also...
Wait, in the 1940s?
This is the 50s.
But still, in the 50s, they traced vulvas back to specific people?
I mean, you can... I'm guessing you can tell, like, the progression.
I guess. That's fair. That's fair. Okay.
They'd have to guess probably I'm guessing mid-teens.
Okay,
15.
that's fair. That's fair.
They also found a belt made from female human nipples.
The nipple belt.
The nipple belt. Famous nipple belt.
The famous, infamous nipple belt.
They found 4 noses, a pair of lips on a window shade drawstring.
I thought they also found nipples on the drawstrings, on some of the drawstrings.
Not from anything I read.
Okay.
But it wouldn't surprise me if they did find it and it was like a little, like they slipped it in like a documentary. But I'm just imagining like a pair of just human lips from your face just on the drawstring for the window blinds.
I think he's just got quite the taste for decoration.
He's very artistic and abstract.
Yeah.
So remember about the Nazi war criminal and making lampshades out of the tattooed prisoners? Ed made a lampshade of human skin, more specifically human faces, fingernails from female fingers. And during this investigation, they found Ed had killed at least one more person. She was identified as Mary Hogan, as they found her entire face, in a paper bag and her skull in a box.
Where else are you supposed to store them?
I don't know where else I'd store my skulls.
Or faces?
Or faces. During the investigation, all body parts were documented and photographed. And Hannah has a question.
The suit made out of his mom's skin? Was that not a thing? I thought that was a thing. Where he would dress up like his mom. He would pretend to be his mom. And then the apron made out of skin. There was also that I remember.
Yeah, that comes into his when they question him.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I think so. Hold on here. Yep, I do. Yep.
Okay.
It was literally like 5 points away.
God, I'm so sorry. I
You're
always
good.
do that to you.
You're
But I
good.
was like, okay, I think he's done listing all the stuff that they found. Okay. Go ahead.
So during the investigation, the body parts.
Patty pots.
Speaking with a Boston
The
accent.
Haras.
The Haras. Mary, the Haras this man committed. So during the investigation, the body parts were documented and photographed. Then they were decently disposed of. During the interviews with Ed Gein, Ed stated that between 1947 and 1952, he would make frequent trips to the 3 local graveyards and would dig up recently buried bodies, all while he was in, how he says, a dazed-like state. On numerous occasions into the graveyard, he would come out of his daze while digging up the body and would then put the grave back in order and leave and return home empty-handed.
Oh, what a good Samaritan.
Right? Hey, at least he didn't dig up everybody.
Right. At least he stopped sometimes.
On other occasions, he would find recently buried bodies of older women that resembled his mother, take their bodies home and skin them. Ed goes on to say he wanted to create a woman suit so that he could, quote, become his mother to literally crawl into her skin, end quote. Don't throw up, Hannah.
Just the level of enmeshment. That is
Sickening on multiple levels.
Oh my god.
When questioned if Ed had sexual relations with the bodies, he denied it, explaining they smelled too bad.
But you lined your house with the skin and held on to the bones and you literally crawled into the skin? Okay.
Yep.
Okay, got it.
Also during this interview, he states shooting Mary Hogan, confirming that he did murder her, but later denies any memory of killing her.
Convenient.
So convenient. Also during the investigation, police suspected Gein of other murders. There were several unsolved cases that happened between Ed's mother's death and the murder of Bernice. These would include Georgia Weckler, who was 8 years old. She was given a ride home from school by a family friend on May 1st, 1947. She was last seen grabbing the mail from the mailbox. When neighbors were questioned, they report seeing a 1936 black Ford sedan, and Ed happened to own a black 1937 Ford sedan. No coincidence there. Evelyn Hartley, 15 years old. On the night she went missing, she was babysitting a 2-year-old she would regularly babysit for a professor of the lacrosse college. Her father, Richard, called the house his daughter was babysitting at, but no one answered, as he would always check in on her at around 8:30 p.m. while she babysat. He tried several more times, concerned because she always answered. Richard drove over to the house, and when Richard arrived to the house, he found the house in just a disarray. Door open, the whole shebang. Evelyn's things were all over the house, and found her glasses broken upstairs, and actually found one of her shoes in the kitchen and another shoe upstairs. But there was no sign of Evelyn. The next one would be Victor Travis, who's 41 years old. Went out deer hunting with a buddy on November 1st, 1950. After an unsuccessful hunting trip, they both decided to stop at a local bar in Plainfield. And around 7 p.m., they both left, never to be seen again. When Ed Gein was asked about these, he denied any involvement in them. Ed was then subjected to a lie detector test. With every question they asked, he would pass the test, seemingly exonerating him of the disappearances. And none of their remains were found on Ed's property.
Okay.
So, on November 21st, 1957, Ed Gein was put on trial. He was put on trial for one account of first-degree murder. When the judge asked how would Ed plea, he responded with not guilty by reason of insanity. During this time, Ed would be diagnosed with schizophrenia and found mentally incompetent to stand trial. Ed would be sent to the Central State Hospital for the criminally insane. Today, the hospital is still there and is called the Dodge Correctional Institution. Even with this new fancy name, it's still a maximum security facility in Waupun, Wisconsin.
Okay.
So he stayed at this institution for about 9 or 10 years. And in 1968, Ed's doctor determined he was now mentally able to confer with counsel and participate in his defense.
Oh.
So another trial began on November 7th, 1968, and it lasted about a week. One of the psychiatrists testified that Ed had told them he did not know whether the killing of Bernice was intentional or accidental.
Okay.
Here's how Ed remembers what happened while being in the store that morning. Ed went to pick up the antifreeze he ordered while at the store. Ed started to look at a rifle that he fancied. The weapon fired, killing Bernice. Ed goes on to say that he was not aiming the rifle at Bernice and does not remember anything else that happened that morning.
Just went off on its own.
Yep, guns just go off on their own. Ed's trial did not have a jury at the request of his defense, with only Judge Robert H. Golmer presiding. And on November 14th, Ed was found guilty by Judge Golmer. A statement was written by the judge, and this is what he wrote. Due to the prohibitive costs, Ed Gein was only tried for only one of the murders, that murder of Mrs. Bernice Warden. Ed Gein also admitted to killing Mary Hogan. And that's what he wrote.
Oh.
Yep.
Okay.
I couldn't find... I was like, that's it?
And it's just going to be left at that. Okay.
Just, he admitted to killing her, but we can't try him for it.
Okay.
Because apparently of costs.
Oh. Okay.
Right. So Ed would spend the rest of his life in a mental institution. So after the trial, once he's in the institution, Ed's property was appraised for $4,700. That's about $48,000 in today's money. So all Ed's belongings were to be auctioned off on March 30th, 1969. There were rumors around town that the Gein property would become a tourist attraction. Just like, oh, it should become a tourist attraction and bring in money.
Well, I thought that the town feared that it would become a tourist attraction, and notoriously the town hates it when anybody from outside of the town shows up, especially if it's for Ed Gein.
So there was that, but there was also the people that saw it as a money opportunity as well.
Oh, okay.
It's kind of like, oh yeah, it's kind of fucked up.
Yeah, yeah.
But 10 days later, on March 20th, in the early morning hours, the house was destroyed by fire. Fire marshal had no official statement on how the fire was started, but they suspect arson.
Yeah.
Ed was informed about his house being destroyed. Ed would shrug and say, just as well. Didn't care for the property, apparently.
Okay. Right.
Now, for his black Ford sedan that he used to haul bodies was sold at auction for $760, about $7,700 in today's money.
Does anybody know where that is now?
I think it's at a museum, I think.
Okay.
I would assume. I didn't actually look where his that went. So, after some time at being at the Central State Hospital, Ed was moved to the Mendota Mental Institution, where he would have respiratory failure, secondary to lung cancer. And due to these health problems, Ed Gein would die on July 26, 1984, at 77 years old. Ed was buried in the Plainfield Cemetery, and over the years, souvenir seekers, as they call them, would chip off pieces of his gravestone. And in some time in 2000, the gravestone was stolen. But it was found June of 2001 near Seattle, Washington, on the other side of the country.
Wow, that traveled far. Probably sold for a pretty penny online.
Probably. Early days of the internet, I mean...
Oh yeah, absolutely.
The stone will be placed in storage of the Warshara County Sheriff's Department, the county where Plainfield resides in. And now Ed's grave is unmarked, but is not unknown, as he is buried between his parents and his brother in the Plainfield Cemetery.
He's next to his brother.
He's next to his brother.
Oh, you know he just fucking hates that.
Well, where else are you going to bury the guy?
Right? Yeah.
But that is the story of Ed Gein.
Thank you for covering that.
Mm-hmm. I was glad to. That was a good one.
That's good stuff. Okay, Austin, are you ready for my story?
I am. I have no idea what you're talking about today.
So before I tell you, I'm going to give you the gift.
Oh, that's right.
I got something for the studio, and it goes along with my story. So I just pull it out of the bag. It's been hiding in the bag so Austin can't see it.
Oh my god, what the fuck is that?
It's a Bigfoot.
It's a Bigfoot.
It's a Bigfoot squishmallow.
It's a Bigfoot. It is a Bigfoot squishmallow.
And her name is Danny. You can read about her in the tag.
All right. Danny loves sushi so much. She taught herself how to make it. This mallow achieves anything she sets her mind to, like being the brand director of her favorite plush toy. When Danny's not working towards her goals, you can find her hosting a fun game night and feasting on homemade tuna rolls with her besties Jetward and Alfie. I was going to read the next part, but it's the same thing.
Just in Spanish.
Just in Spanish.
So isn't she soft?
So soft.
She's
squishy.
so stinking cute.
The cuteness over it's like, Argh.
Yeah, so I got us a Bigfoot for here. I might also eventually Build-A-Bear.
Build-A-Bear
has a Bigfoot stuffy, and he's apparently like huge. So we may end up with one of those in here one day.
Oh boy.
Just putting that out there. But
all the plushies we have Seamus and now we have Danny.
I know.
Do you think they're going to be best friends?
Absolutely. I mean, they're both round. They both have teefies that stick out.
Little toofers. We're talking about Bigfoot today.
Yes, Austin, we're talking about Bigfoot today. Oh, that's so good. That's so good. All right. Well, yeah. So as Austin so astutely pointed out, we're talking about Bigfoot today.
I went to public school, okay?
So did I. So this is going to be a good episode. We're going to have two big names on there. Gein and Bigfoot. To go back to our episode where I talked about Minnesota lore and cryptids.
Yes.
I just kind of pulled my notes describing Bigfoot from there, and then we'll get into it. So, Bigfoot's also known as the Sasquatch.
Sam Squanch.
And it's got a human-like face, and is described as a large bipedal creature that has been reported as being anywhere from 6 to 15 feet tall. And they're also described as very muscular.
Oh yeah, have you seen? They don't miss leg day.
Mm-hmm, they don't miss leg day. The creature is covered head to toe in fur that's usually black or brown, sometimes red. And other sightings include glowing red or yellow eyes at night, and a strong odor described as skunky, death, and garbage. Yeah.
No thanks.
So, the name Bigfoot comes from a story that was first published in 1958.
Oh.
A journalist named Andrew Gonzoli published a letter from a reader described as fun and dubious in the Humboldt Times. The letter detailed large and mysterious footprints that were found by loggers in Northern California. Gonzoli thought that the letter would just make for a good Sunday morning read, and joked that maybe there was a relative of the abominable snowman of the Himalayas out in the wilderness of California.
Why wouldn't there be?
And then he didn't really think much of it. But the story really fascinated the readers of the paper.
Mm.
And in a follow-up column they ended up doing, they reported that the loggers who found the prints had started calling the creature Bigfoot.
Aptly named.
So Sasquatch sightings go back hundreds of years at least.
At least.
At least. So there's different names with slightly varying descriptions all over the world, but if we're focusing on North America, the name Sasquatch can be traced back to the Native and First Nations Salish tribes and their word Sasquit, meaning wild man. Thought to be relatively benign and a forest spirit, it was a large, hairy, man-shaped creature. When talking about lore around large creatures like this, some also bring up the Algonquin Witico or Wendigo. And then there's the Rougarou, thought by some to be linked to the Anishinaabe tribe, or the Anishinaabe peoples, which I learned today. This is what I'm learning you. I learned today that the Anishinaabe is the name that the Ojibwa tribe prefers to go by.
Really?
And The Ojibwe is also sometimes called Chippewa, but they hate that because that was basically the French's terrible attempt at saying Ojibwa.
Okay.
So they're fine with Ojibwa. They're okay with that, but they prefer Anishinaabe because that's what they actually are. So anyway, okay. that was my little thing. Anyway, the Rougueru is actually a Michif pronunciation of the French term for wolfman, loup-garou. So the Métis Nation, or Mede Nation, that was basically them trying to pronounce the French word for wolfman, was Rougueru.
So a lot of these words we're getting is just because these people were too lazy to learn the actual pronunciation.
No. Well, more so the French were too lazy. What I learned today...
Why is it always the French?
Exactly. Today I learned, which I knew that the French were the problem. That they are largely a problem. And have been. And obviously all white settlers in North America were a problem. But the French really just came in and didn't try very hard. But, so basically the Rougueru is a mispronunciation of loup-garou by native people in the area. So some stories of the Rougueru are from French werewolf stories. Some are adaptations of Wendigo stories, and others are a combination of the two. But the point I'm trying to make is that Rougueru is not actually Native American.
It's French.
It's French.
Oy vey.
Yep. It was a lot. So we got through it, and then North American settlers also reported sightings of Bigfoot-like creatures in the late 1800s and early 1900s. So that article in the 50s had people looking back at older reports of wild men, and was the first time that Bigfoot became a general discussion, was in the 50s. Once the discussion started, Bigfoot became a popular character featured in men's adventure magazines and books through the 60s.
Of course, because Bigfoot's a big masculine furry dude.
And my next point was, at this time, Bigfoot was thought to be obviously a he, and was known to be a primal, dangerous creature out of the past who lurked in the modern wilderness, which, that was a quote from History.com.
Okay.
In the 70s, pseudo-documentaries were exploring his existence, and films portrayed him as a sexual predator.
I mean, on what grounds can you just...
I don't know.
Where's the proof? Where's the evidence?
I don't know. Because he's a big hairy man, I guess? I don't know.
Well, I guess all big hairy men are sexual predators, huh?
In the 70s, apparently.
Oh, so every man, because...
I don't know.
Big facial bushy mustaches
Listen,
are everywhere.
I just work here. But thankfully by the 80s, people stopped slandering Bigfoot's name, and he became a more lovable icon as a symbol for environmentalism and preservation of the wilderness. Now we're actually going to go back to 1924.
Oh. And
we're going to talk about Albert Ostman. Now this is going to be the main chunk of... I'm covering one Bigfoot story.
Oh, like this is his encounter kind of deal?
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, okay.
So, I first heard this story, like, maybe 2-ish years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember if it was from Lore or Astonishing Legends, but I think it was from one of those two, and it just kind of stuck with me. Like I said, this happened in 1924. Albert was a Canadian prospector who decided to take a nice vacation camping near Toba Inlet in British Columbia. When he first arrived to the area, a local older Native or First Nations gentleman gave him a ride to where he wanted to start his journey. The man told Albert of the gold that people had brought out of the area, and a story about an old drunk who had stumbled across an old mine and would go out there regularly to get some gold, come back, drink it away, and go back for more.
Damn.
What a life.
I'm just gonna go get some gold, drink till I got no more, and just we'll go back for more?
Basically.
Man.
But the last time he went out to collect more gold, he never returned. And some people believe that a Sasquatch killed him. So Albert hadn't heard of Sasquatch at this point.
Oh?
So he asked the man what kind of animal it was, and the man responded that it wasn't an animal, but they were, and I quote, big people living in the mountains, and told him more tales of the hairy creatures. Albert told the man that he didn't believe in his fables about mountain giants, and maybe thousands of years ago there had been such creatures, but not anymore. And the man just simply told him that there may not be many left, but they still exist.
Sounds pretty serious about this.
Well, here's the thing. When a Native person or a First Nations person tells you about a monster out in the woods, you best believe them about that.
I mean, they're the ones as close to nature as you can be.
They've been here longer than anybody.
Their people have, yeah, absolutely.
So, that's all I'm saying. So, when they got to their destination, Albert had dinner with the man and told him to keep an eye out for him in about 3 weeks, as that's how long he planned to be out camping, and then they parted ways. Over the next few days, Albert spent time hiking through the wilderness, prospecting for minerals, and finding good places to rest at night. After a few days, he found a cozy spot to make his permanent camp for the remainder of the trip. He spent time putting together what he called a classy setup and got comfortable. But over the next few nights, some things started to happen. After the first night, he noticed that his things had been gone through in the night, but nothing was missing. He figured a porcupine had come through in the night and gotten into his bag, as he knew that they liked leather. So...
No, that's something I didn't know.
I didn't either. I learned a lot about porcupines today, too.
Oh.
So, all from this man's story, which I read his account of it, like, all the way through.
Ooh, all right.
It was a long one.
Nice.
So the following night, he made sure to put his boots in his sleeping bag and sleep with his rifle next to him just in case. And when he woke up in the morning, his sack had been tipped over, but it was still hanging from the pole that he had set up to hang it on overnight. And he noticed that a package of prunes and pancake flour was missing from the bag. His salt was untouched, though, and since, as he referred to them, porkies were known to go for salt, he figured maybe it was a different animal.
Okay.
I kind of love the way he talks a little bit.
It's a very interesting way.
There were some problematic things that I saw, and they're just, like, old-timey, like, views a little bit about, like, people and stuff.
I can imagine.
But like
what
his verbiage,
thoughts and views would be.
His verbiage, porkies, my god. So he looked around. He didn't find any tracks, and he didn't think it was a bear since his things weren't torn up. He said bears, tear things up and leave a mess.
Yeah.
So.
Shit. If they want it, they're gonna get it.
Right. So he stayed close to camp, hoping to catch whatever was getting into his pack sack, and still hoped for a porky because he wanted to make some good porky stew.
Porky stew?
Porky stew.
Oh, man.
So the visits went on for a total of 3 nights, until he finally decided he'd try to stay up through the night to catch whatever was going through his things. He laid down that night, still fully dressed, boots in the bottom of his sleeping bag, and a rifle tucked into the sleeping bag with him, but he dozed off.
Of course.
And he said he was not a light sleeper. Like, he could sleep through pretty much anything.
Which does not help him in the situation.
No, not at all. Albert was awoken by something picking him up.
No thanks.
He said that at first he didn't remember where he was, but soon remembered that he was on a camping trip. Being half asleep, he thought maybe there had been a snow slide, but then remembered that there wasn't any snow near him. His next thought was that it felt like he was being carried and bumped around on horseback. Mind you, he's in his sleeping bag. His whole sleeping bag, everything is being carried, and he's... God. Yep, but he could tell that whatever was carrying him was standing upright, so somebody's, like, Santa Claused him over...
Oh my god.
Over the shoulder, right?
Wow, okay.
Unfortunately, Albert couldn't reach his knife to cut himself out of the sleeping bag, but he had a good hold on his gun while he waited the ride out.
Oh, god.
He said that he could also feel his pack sack and the cans in it, like, bumping against him. Uh-huh. And at one point, like, the sleeping bag and him were just, like, dragged across the ground.
Great.
Yeah.
A big fella got tired.
Right, like, apparently he described being able to tell that when they were going, like, up and downhill and everything, and all sorts of stuff. So about 3 hours after waking up, estimated, Albert was finally put down and heard his bag fall to the ground with him. He heard chatter that was unfamiliar to him, and he finally got the chance to try and crawl out of his sleeping bag, though his legs were numb.
Oh, I could imagine.
Yeah. While he hadn't heard about Sasquatch until just a few days prior, Albert stated that at this point he knew he was amongst them, even though it was dark and he could only see outlines, and there were 4 of them standing around him. Mm-mm. He proceeded to ask the Sasquatches, "What you fellows want with me?" And they just continued to chatter amongst themselves.
Like he's not even there.
As it got lighter out, Albert could see that he was surrounded by mountains now, and the 4 creatures looked like they made up a family. 2 bigger ones, a father and a mother, and 2 smaller ones, a boy and a girl. Albert described the two younger ones as seeming scared of him, while the older female seemed unamused and unhappy with what the older male had brought home.
Why'd you bring home another one?
Like, I'm just imagining her standing there like, yeah, and meanwhile, the older male was chattering on and waving his arms around. Albert described it as if he was, like, trying to tell them, like, his ideas and what he was thinking of doing, like...
Do you see the possibilities with this man?
Like, do you see what I did? I walked for 3 hours with this guy over my shoulder. Like... Shortly after, the family left him for a bit, but they didn't go far. Albert noticed he was in a small valley and noticed an opening towards one end of it where the father Sasquatch sat and watched. Albert went to take stock of what he had left in his bag and try to come up with a plan to escape. While the creatures left him alone for a bit, the children were always nearby, watching him curiously from behind bushes. Albert got up and ventured to find some water, and he found a small spring nearby. On his way back, he noticed where the Sasquatches slept, and that they had made a rather comfortable and warm-looking bed out of dried moss, and blankets woven out of bark and stuffed with moss.
Oh.
When he returned from getting a drink, the younger male was looking over Albert's belongings, but he wasn't touching anything.
Oh, just
kind of like checking it out.
So better than any other young kid out there.
Very well behaved.
Yeah, very.
But he's obviously terrified, so... Albert recalls that not much happened for the first day other than eating his food cold because there was nothing to build a fire with. He had an empty snuff box, and he tossed it toward the younger male because he could tell he was curious. And he said the young Sasquatch quickly grabbed it and brought it over to his sister to show her, and they figured out how to open it, and they played with it for a while, before the young male went to show his father the box, and after that they just seemed to chat back and forth about it for a while. I think it's so interesting that they're, like, talking to each other.
I'm curious what this sounded like. This is all I'm trying to think.
I do have a couple things that, like, kind of describe it. Okay. There's actually one in a couple points.
Sweet.
The next morning, Albert decided to try and leave. He packed his things and thought that maybe he could shoot his way out if he needed to, even though he only had 6 shells. He walked up to the opening, and the old man stood up and put his hands out as if to push Albert. Albert pointed at the opening, and the man kept backing him up, saying something that sounded like, "Soka, Soka." Albert decided that his Winchester might not be a match for the old man, and decided it would probably just make him angry.
Yeah.
So he returned to where he had set up camp the night before to try and come up with another way to escape and find his way back to civilization. Because, mind you, he has no idea where he is at this point.
Right.
He was carried for 3 hours in an unknown direction from his campsite. So, over the next few days, Albert watched the Sasquatches and how they lived. He said that the mother would come home with armfuls of grass, twigs, and nuts, and the younger male would climb one of the mountains every day and bring down some sort of sweet grass that they'd eat, and eventually shared some with Albert. He also eventually had said that he thought that they didn't live here permanently, but they probably migrated, and this was one of their stops, because that sweet grass was probably in season.
Okay.
Albert would make little things out of empty cans that he had and give them to the younger male, and sometimes then that Sasquatch would come back to ask for one for his sister, so they could both have one. Like I said, the kids were super curious. Albert also gave him another snuff box with a small amount of snuff in it. He said that the young male ate some of the snuff and then brought it to his dad, who ate the rest, and then they just chattered on for a while.
Well, this stuff's great. Right,
yeah. At one point, the younger male went up to Albert and pointed at the father and then the snuff box and said something like, "Ook." And Albert figured this meant that the older male liked the snuff, and he tried to communicate to the son that the father had to come and get some from Albert himself, but wasn't sure if the Sasquatch understood. Mm-hmm. But at this point, Albert's plan was to try to give enough snuff to the father to at least slow him down or kill him. And his idea being that if he ate it on his own accord, he wouldn't be on the hook for murder.
Albert's got a conscience still with this. Okay.
Which I thought was really interesting, because in another article that I read, somebody stated that there's definitely people out there who have shot at Sasquatch, but they don't come forward because they're afraid that if they did hit it, that they might be tried for murder, because what if it's actually a person?
Oh, okay.
So true. I thought that was really interesting that he had said that. Albert goes on to describe more about how the family looked, lived, and passed their time. pondered maybe bringing the daughter into civilization with him, but decided against it as he didn't agree with forcing one's way of life onto another person.
So profound.
I know. And he did refer to them as people more than once. Like, quite a lot of the time, he referred to them as people.
Okay.
So on the 6th morning of him being with the family...
Wow.
He decided he had gathered enough twigs and dry moss to start a fire, along with some of the labels from the cans he'd had on him. He made some coffee that was strong and drank about half of it with his breakfast. Albert said that the smell of the coffee brought both the male Sasquatches over to him, and they sat about 10 feet away. The older male had been coming closer to him in the previous days when he brought out his snuff, so he took some out and took a pinch and put it in his lip, which he said that the older Sasquatch seemed to think that was a waste to, like, put it in your lip, because he liked eating it. He thought you were supposed to eat it.
Oh, okay.
So the older male pointed at it as if to ask for some, and Albert held out the box, hoping he would just, like, take a pinch or so and not waste the whole box, because he said he only had 2 boxes left. But the father took the whole box and emptied it into his mouth and licked it clean.
Wow.
A few minutes later, Albert could tell that the father was getting sick. The Sasquatch had grabbed the remainder of the coffee and downed it, grounds and all, which only seemed to make him feel worse.
Well, yeah.
Yep. When the Sasquatch started to squeal, he decided that was his chance to get away. Albert grabbed his things and his rifle, and he started to head toward the opening in the valley. The mother had started to scream when she noticed the state of the father as he rushed to the spring for water, and she started to follow Albert as he neared the exit point. He turned and fired 1 shot above her head, and she ran to hide. Albert reloaded and started moving. He said he was moving downhill in a canyon and must have made about 3 miles in a record-breaking time.
Wow.
He eventually climbed a ridge to get to high ground so that he could see where he was and if any of the Sasquatch had followed him. And he pointed out at this point he had a really light pack and everything, so he was able to move pretty quick. He eventually figured out roughly where he was and that he was heading in the right direction. And after a night of rest and continuing to move for a bit, Albert came across some loggers and told them that he had been on a prospecting trip and got lost. They helped him out, and after hiking for a bit longer and catching a boat, Albert made it back to Vancouver.
Wow.
Yeah. Albert Ostman didn't tell this story for more than 24 years for fear of being labeled as crazy, until finally in 1957 when there were more stories about the Sasquatch appearing in media. He told his story to a local newspaper called The Province. So, that's the end of the story, but I do just want to end on one thing. It was a point I read in a New York Times article about Bigfoot. Somebody had made the point, basically, that if someone came back from spending time out in the wilderness and said that they had seen giant rodents that were felling trees and building dams, and you had no idea that beavers existed, you would probably think they made it up.
My God, you're right.
So, and just as a point of, why do people still not believe this and everything? And they made this point after making a lot of good points, anatomically about the Bigfoot, about, the prints that we find that are taken a bit more seriously. And I was going to go into all of that, but then I got into Albert's story, and it was just a lot.
Oh, yeah.
But when you look at kind of the anatomy and all of that stuff, it's just really interesting. The amount of work somebody would have to put in to fake these prints. Your average Joe isn't just out here doing that shit.
No.
They're anthropologists and people who study human bodies and everything look at these footprints and they're they look at what the anatomy of the Bigfoot would be and they're like, this actually makes a lot of sense. It's not just a blown up human footprint. It's human-like, but there's specific differences in just the way the foot is built. And I just thought it was super interesting.
Yeah, I mean, Bigfoot is definitely an enigma of sorts. And it's and the thing is, what makes me believe is that you have too many people from too many different parts of the world and country here that have this similar, like you were saying in the beginning of your story, a very similar size, shape, just maybe different colors of hair or fur, whatever it is.
Similar lore in general.
Yeah.
Even if it's not exactly the same, there's some similarities, and Like,
you can't have this many people seeing this one thing.
It's kind of like with dragons and stuff like that, where some form of like a dragon has been seen in a lot of cultures across the world and things like that. And it's just really interesting. And I think that if Bigfoot is out there, they're smart enough to be able to avoid us, and that's why it's so hard even now with all the technology that we have to catch them, because they're out in very remote areas of the wilderness.
And if they're using that cave system that we have in this country too.
Oh yeah, I mean, there are insane cave systems all over and everything, and if they're migrating, they're not staying in one spot, so like there's just so many moving parts to it. But yeah, that's Bigfoot. Hi, Adam. I meant to say before I started this that this is for you because you love Bigfoot so much.
Adam?
My friend Adam from the restaurant.
Well, shout out to Adam.
Adam always listens to the Sasquatch Chronicles and the Bleeding Grave.
Awesome. So he's getting the best of both worlds.
But yeah, so I told him a while ago I was going to do Bigfoot, and so I finally did it. Here we are. It was for Adam.
You know, now that you say it like that, I think I remember you saying something like that like a few months ago now.
Yeah.
Like, I really got to do Bigfoot.
Really got to do Bigfoot. And so here we are. I want to try to do more cryptids, but I also want to try to focus on like the paranormal and ghosts and stuff a lot more. So
Hey,
we're going to sprinkle some cryptids in.
We're here for it.
I might have a cryptid for the next episode.
Ooh, okay.
So pending, I'm pretty sure I'm going to do it, but just in case I don't, I'm not going to say for sure that I'm going to do it.
Leave our 20s off of the bang.
Yeah, I suppose. But our next episode actually comes out on Christmas. So
it does,
if you're able to find a Christmassy story,
yes.
I'm going to try to do a Christmassy story because it
I
comes out.
have been looking at Christmas stories of true crime, and
There's a lot. There's more than you'd think.
Sleigh bells ring-a-ling for sure.
So yeah, I will get on to our cemetery fun fact.
Yes.
Goodness.
This is Danny's first cemetery fun fact.
It's Danny's first cemetery fun fact. So this one's about yawning.
Oh no. I yawn a lot.
Always cover your mouth when yawning to prevent your spirit from leaving and the devil entering. You cover your mouth when you yawn?
Never.
Austin? But also you don't have a soul.
That's true.
Well, it said spirit though. So
is spirit and soul the same thing, or are they two different things?
Depends on who you ask.
I
would say they're two different things.
I have spirit in other things, but I have no soul. For I am a ginger, for those who do not know.
So, all right. Well, I think that's episode 28.
Yeah, thank you guys for joining us here on the Bleeding Grave. I think it is now for us to head over, like we're going to a completely different place to record the auditorium.
We need to go over and do the auditorium. So if you want to check that out and listen to us talk for usually another 10 to 20 minutes about just something weird, go subscribe on Patreon, and you can listen to the auditorium after every episode.
This one's going to be a good one.
It's a good one. It's a really
Hannah
interesting one.
actually said, "Wait, what?"
I know, he texted me because I asked him. We go back and forth choosing what we're going to do. So I asked him what we were going to do so I could read about it a little bit. And he told me, and I was like, excuse me? The what?
I was like, this is the exact reaction I was looking for.
Right? I think specifically I said, fucking what?
Yes, fucking what?
So we're going to go do that now. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you guys on Christmas.
With episode 29.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
The Bleeding Grave is hosted by Hannah Slavic and Austin Winger.
Music by Hannah Slavic.
You can find us on social media on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
You can listen to The Bleeding Grave on Spotify, Pandora, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and more.